We're going to change gears here from talking about soils to now talking about green infrastructure, maintenance, and job development. So we've got a great presentation in just a moment from Mollie Dowling. And so I'd like to introduce Mollie. She is the Executive Director of OAI. Mollie has managed a variety of complex federal, state, and private workforce development initiatives, serving employers as well as low-income adults and youth, including the successful Calumet Green Manufacturing Partnership. She launched Highbridge L3C as a social enterprise of OAI, aimed at creating employment opportunities through the installation and maintenance of green infrastructure. She is responsible for all operational oversight, including core business and functional disciplines of both OAI and Highbridge. Mollie Dowling holds a master's degree in community development and has a passion for creative social change that has grown over 17 years of experience leading large-scale employment and training opportunities. With that, I will stop sharing my screen so that Mollie may share hers.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Chelsea and Adam and the Friends of the Chicago River Board and sponsors for the opportunity to be here today. It's a real pleasure, and it's funny how much my hair has grown since that picture. It's been, I guess that's an old picture I need to update. Anyway, it's an honor to be here today, and I'm excited to talk to you a little more about our work related to green infrastructure and workforce development. Let's see, here we go. So first, a little bit about OAI. So we are a nonprofit workforce development organization headquartered in Chicago. We have a satellite office in the south suburbs, as well as remote training and training we offer through our partner organizations and partner trainers across the country. We train on average about 4,000 to 4,500 people per year nationwide. And we've been around since about 1976. Our mission is to offer skills training that leads to safe, meaningful employment and helps companies and communities to thrive. So the bulk of the work that I'm going to talk about today relates to our pre-employment education and training. However, OAI has been funded for over 25 years from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences and the US EPA. That work has been largely related to our environmental careers work that is all about connecting residents who live in brownfields impacted communities with the education, training, and certifications they need to become employed with contractors doing that cleanup work. So we have a lens of environmental justice that cares both about the individuals and communities impacted by disproportionate dumping, as well as the environment itself. So that is sort of what brought us to thinking about green infrastructure and workforce development in the first place. I should note that we've also partnered with Green Corps Chicago, which is a City of Chicago sponsored workforce development program that's been also around for over 20 years. It is a 9-month-long transitional jobs program serving Chicago residents with very little work history in order to get into green careers like landscaping, green infrastructure, ecological restoration, forestry, and arborists. OAI brings the environmental health and safety funded by US EPA to that program and has been a longtime partner for almost 20 years. So in about 2012, we started getting this idea that there was all of these investments going from public grants into green infrastructure, and that there weren't a lot of opportunities for real job training to get into those careers, nor for employment into those careers. And so it became really a question of economic development for us to say, how can we help folks who live in these impacted communities, as Mary Pat really wisely said, that so many of these communities that experience the worst flooding because they have the most crumbling gray infrastructure are Black and brown communities who are predominantly low income. And so we wanted to make sure that if we were going to do either training or create a company, we wanted to make sure it was focused and centered on those communities and on those individuals who live in those communities. So as Chelsea read in my bio, we started a social enterprise called Highbridge around 2012 to do this exact work, to start a company ourselves so that we could create jobs, recruiting from our own training programs like our environmental career programs and the Green Corps program, whose focus is on unemployed job seekers with barriers to employment. So meaning maybe they have a criminal background or low education or some other reason why they don't have much work history to get into the job market themselves. Of course, it's always our mission to focus on careers with career pathways, meaning someone doesn't end up where they start. They're able to further their education and training in order to get better jobs along the way and pursue, their the pathway towards the middle class. We've always seen Highbridges as sort of a stepping stone for individuals who we employ onto other private ecological restoration firms, park districts, and public works at various municipalities. So it's meant to be something, a starting point, not an end point for individuals. We are funded, of course, green infrastructure is funded by all different kinds of entities. It's gained traction across the country. Over the past decade, there have been many grant programs offering financial assistance to green infrastructure installation across the city, region, and state. The strength of these programs is that they offered critical financial assistance to support installation. And while they all require O&M plans, too often there is little to no oversight in the long term on whether or not they are maintained. So some of the funders include MWRD, include the state IGIG program, include the National Fish and Wildlife Fund, Shy-Cal Rivers Fund, etc. Thankfully, this last year, we saw for the first time Shy-Cal funding maintenance as an explicit target for their programs. So that was really wonderful to see. OAI has used these funds to install through Highbridge dozens of green infrastructure sites throughout the region. We've had a focus on the Calumet with overlaps to the communities Mary Pat mentioned, Calumet City, Blue Island, Midlothian, and Gary, Indiana, as well as the city of Chicago. So those sites range from municipal sites to park districts to brownfield sites, industrial sites. We've sort of done it all, very large scale to very small scale, and have learned a lot along the way. Of course, one of the largest things we've learned is the importance of maintenance. We know that maintenance failures is just, so critical to why these beautiful sites that get installed fail. We think of green infrastructure like any other investment we have, like a boiler, our car, our financial portfolio. They all require maintenance to maintain their value. And when the maintenance is neglected, their performance diminishes and they don't function properly or as designed. And this is the same for green infrastructure. I know this is not new for anyone listening in today. And many low to moderate income municipalities across the region struggle to maintain their green infrastructure installations in the long term. They continue to experience flooding, they don't function as designed, and the loss of aesthetic value means that they lose credibility and support by the local community. And sadly, we've seen sites, diminish so dramatically. Sometimes they're mowed over, sometimes they're just incredibly neglected and overgrown. Often once that happens and they are full of weeds or invasive species, the surrounding neighbors don't support them in any way. They feel that were never worth the investment and often don't support further green infrastructure projects in their community. So, it's a huge problem throughout the region. The other piece here is that, the communities that are charged with maintaining these sites once they're installed also don't have the necessary staffing or training required to keep these things functioning properly. So seeing all of these problems in communities, OAI, Highbridge, and our work in the Calumet Stormwater Collaborative, specifically the training and maintenance work group, we came up with this idea of sharing services to maintain green infrastructure. So we had installed all of these sites across the region and knew that they weren't performing as we'd hoped after years after installation, and said, you know, we need to find some kind of large scale solution to this. So through the training and maintenance work group, we came up with this idea of sharing services across communities. We wanted to find a solution that would be both affordable and realistic for these low income communities. We thought that this solution would, as the slide says, protect community assets through a high quality maintenance program, reduce the individual costs for municipalities, and provide opportunities for workforce development with a focus on equity, meaning that we would train folks from the communities where we did the installation to be a part of the maintenance solution. We thought of this idea through the training and maintenance work group of the Calumet Stormwater Collaborative, and thankfully there was an opportunity to get it funded through this Great Lakes One Water initiative. In 2019, we were approached by the GLOW program, and it was initially funded by a $1 million investment from the Great Lakes Protection Fund. The partnership received additional funding from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation and the Kresge Foundation, and it included 27 community foundations and their local partners, and they were grouped into 6 regional teams. Each team identified a partner and a priority project, and the Lower Lake Michigan team, which was comprised of the Chicago Community Trust, the Legacy Foundation out of Maryville, Indiana, the Evanston Community Foundation, and the Unity Foundation of LaPorte County, all came together to support this green infrastructure maintenance project concept. So the idea behind that was to research shared service models and best practices, then conduct outreach to the municipalities who wanted to be a part of the pilot, put out an RFP for the service provider who would be the entity that would actually do the maintenance for us, then develop contracts across the municipalities, including an access and an indemnity contract, and then host skills training to provide outreach for those workers that we'd like to recruit, as well as for our municipal partners. The intent was to pilot the shared services concept in Northeast Illinois and Northwest Indiana, deliver these on-the-ground services for 2 years, evaluate and hopefully scale up in a sustainable way in 2022. Now, I'll say that the program started with the training that we provided in March 2020 of this year, but just 3 days after that training, of course, the state of Illinois and the rest of the world shut down as the COVID-19 cases surged. And around that same time, we found out that the Council of Michigan Foundations pulled all of the funding from all of those 27 project sites across the Great Lakes region and created all kinds of unforeseen and unexpected challenges for our project. However, it also opened the door for new partnerships and opportunities for funding. So new support came in this year from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Coastal Management Zone, as well as the Chicago Community Trust through their Our Great Rivers program. So we've been able to continue the initiative. We've still been able to do our pilot season. We rolled out this first training in March, as I said, through the training and maintenance work group of the Calumet Stormwater Collaborative, which was very exciting. We offered maintenance services for 3 communities through the 2020 growing season, and that included Midlothian and Blue Island in Illinois and Gary, Indiana We maintained about 12 sites, and as the season comes to a close this fall, we are in the process of evaluating the first year, what kind of cost savings there is in this kind of shared services model, as well as, how the sites perform given our maintenance. Thankfully, we have secured funding for continued maintenance for the 2021 season, and we are planning and thinking about what 2022 will be. So it's a very fortunate scenario that despite all of the changes, including the loss of the major fund, we've been able to continue the idea. I think it was we all know how important maintenance is, and so this idea has been able to drum up a lot of enthusiasm across the region from all funders who are interested in green infrastructure. So I mentioned this, that we, all the things we already accomplished this year. So the second initiative I wanted to mention is part of the Robbins Renewal. This is a large-scale initiative that MWRD has been supporting in Robbins. It's along the CalSec Channel to the north and Midlothian Creek to the south. It runs through the village, and the village has been experiencing incredible flooding problems with both overbank and overland flooding. In the problem areas, the flooding occurs several times per year. Many local streets, including Kedzie Avenue, flood nearly every time it rains. As Mary Pat suggested, this community is very traumatized by the flooding it experiences. MWRD's Robbins Renewal project includes a 10-acre site. The phase 1 site that OAI and Highbridge are involved in is a 10-acre site that is along the proposed diversion channel. And the idea is to create the diversion channel and increase by installing green infrastructure along the channel, as well as increase the recreational use of the CalSec channel through a new kayak launch access point. We always plan to offer workforce development opportunities by offering training and making sure we get local folks hired on that initiative. Of course, as folks in this community know, the urban rivers flood incredibly and cause enormous erosion along the riverfront in these more industrial or sort of not in the center of the urban areas, as Mary Pat suggested, but out in these suburban communities. Erosion becomes enormously important, and green infrastructure maintenance is important to alleviate that. So we've always known that how important workforce development is to this, and that we needed to make sure folks get the training they need in order to conduct this maintenance, and to even before as they're installed, that they're installed correctly and done well. Our partners at Jobs for the Future published this Exploring Green Infrastructure Workforce study based on research in 2017, and it helped highlight what we already knew, which is that green infrastructure can lead to construction and landscaping jobs. There are a lot of growing opportunities in this field over the next 10 years. We believe that they're a really important entry-level job opportunity for folks without a lot of work history, and they provide above minimum wage and offer career growth along the career pathway. As I suggested before, is so important to OAI to be involved in any workforce development initiative in any sector. We know how important education and training is in order to be successful in this field. It's important for folks coming in terms of job opportunities, but also volunteers, municipal staff, anyone that's touching green infrastructure needs to understand what they're dealing with, what kind of native plants to use, and some of the specific soil qualities, as Mary Pat suggested. It's worth noting that technical training is not the only solution to maintenance dilemma. And during the first year of the pilot, we've already realized there are municipalities that rely on public work staff and our resident volunteers, while other entities rely on groundskeepers that may not be trained in green infrastructure. So providing training to these groups can help with the maintenance problem. There is while has never been a national sort of standard for green infrastructure training, there is the emergence of this new National Green Infrastructure Certification Program, and it has been offered through MWRD this last year, and we're hoping to be able to offer it again. The program itself is a 40-hour certification. It's proven to be very effective, and I think there's a growing interest across the country. We hope to be able to offer it soon this year so that professionals in the field can understand the basics and have a certification they can take with them to show their city, their employer, that they understand green infrastructure. It also will help ensure that there's uniformity across the field for maintenance. So in summary, I think I'm about at time, but we know that Green infrastructure provides great benefits to communities, but that number one, maintenance is such an important factor in making sure that they perform in the long term, as well as a trained workforce. We want to make sure that there's training available to both job seekers as well as folks in the industry already, so that maintenance is successful. I think that's the end of my presentation, so I really appreciate the time today and welcome the question and answer discussion at the end.